I'm Ava Monroe, 30 years old, an independent woman living in a small apartment in Cedar Falls, working for a big tech company. On the outside, I seem like I have it all together. I'm successful, confident, and accomplished in my career. But deep down, I carry the weight of a past I can't quite escape. Right now, I'm sitting in my favorite coffee shop, a quiet little place with dim lighting and soft music playing in the background. My coffee, black and strong, has long gone cold, but I can't seem to focus on that. I'm staring at my phone, reading through work emails, but my mind is miles away. I've been in this job for years, running marketing campaigns, closing deals, and attending endless meetings. My career has been stable, even flourishing. But when I pause and think about it, I realize I've been running on autopilot, chasing goals and deadlines but not truly living. The last few years have felt like an endless treadmill, one that I can't seem to get off of. The truth is, I just ended a 2-year relationship with someone I thought would be the one. But as with so many relationships before, it fell apart when I needed it the most. He left without looking back, and now I'm here, nursing a broken heart, trying to make sense of everything. And then there's my family, particularly Bella. She's my younger sister by 3 years, but it feels like she's been in competition with me for as long as I can remember. When I think about it, it's like Bella has always lived in the shadow of my success. At least, that's how it felt growing up. But she never showed it in the typical way. She never asked for my help or expressed vulnerability. Instead, she made it her mission to outshine me, to make sure that anything I had, she could take. Whether it was a guy I was dating or an achievement at work, Bella was always there, subtly but persistently, making sure I didn't get too comfortable. I've tried to understand it, tried to forgive her for all the times she made me feel less than. But deep down, I know she's always been in some kind of quiet battle with me, one that I didn't even sign up for. So, here I am, sitting alone in this quiet cafe, scrolling through my phone, and staring at an invitation that I wasn't sure I would ever receive. It's from Bella and her husband, Marcus, their 15th anniversary party. I've been avoiding family gatherings for a while, especially since things between me and Bella have gotten even more strained. But then the invitation pops up, and I can't help but feel this nagging sense that maybe, just maybe, I should go. I hesitate for a long time, my finger hovering over the screen. A part of me wants to decline, to stay away from the mess that is my family. But then I stop and think, maybe this is my chance to finally face the truth. Maybe this is the moment where I confront everything that's been building up over the years. Maybe, for once, I'll stop running away. Growing up in our family was like living in a constant spotlight. There was always an unspoken expectation that I would be the one who made something of myself. From the moment I could walk, my parents pushed me forward, academically, socially, professionally. I was the eldest, the one who was supposed to set an example, and for most of my life I did. I excelled in school naturally. The grades came easily, the awards followed like clockwork. My parents beamed with pride every time I brought home a certificate or aced a test. I could feel the weight of their pride, the sense of relief that they could point to me and say, "This is our daughter, Ava. She's going places." I didn't mind the attention. I thrived on it, at least at first. But over the years, I began to realize that I was playing a part, not just for my parents but for myself. I was too afraid to fail, too afraid to fall short of their expectations. And then there was Bella, my sister. At first, I didn't really notice it, how she would always slide into my achievements, always shadowing my every move. But now, looking back, it was clear as day. Bella was 3 years younger than me, but I could never shake the feeling that she had spent our entire lives trying to compete with me. She had this quiet way of doing it, subtle, sneaky, and manipulative. It wasn't loud or obnoxious, but rather it was a constant undercurrent. A small remark here, a calculated comment there. It was never enough to cause a scene, but always enough to make me question my place. We grew up in the same house, shared the same rooms, the same meals, the same holidays, but it was as though we lived in different worlds. My world was one of high expectations, filled with accolades and praise. Hers, a world that seemed consumed with me and the need to surpass me. When I earned my first job at a prestigious tech company after college, Bella seemed to have coincidentally found a job at a similar company in the same industry with a very similar role. I could see the way she'd drop little hints about her success, just enough to make it sound as though she was on the same level as me, even though I knew the truth, she wasn't. She hadn't worked as hard, hadn't put in the hours, yet she reveled in the illusion of being my equal. And the relationships, that was the real kicker. I would bring a guy home, someone I liked, someone I was falling for, and within weeks, Bella would somehow end up spending more time with him than I did. It was never outright, it was always subtle. She'd accidentally bump into him while he was picking up coffee or find herself sitting next to him at a party. Before long, they'd be dating. It happened so often that I started to question whether it was just bad luck. But deep down, I knew she was doing it on purpose. The worst part? I never confronted her. I let it slide. I let the little betrayals build up like cracks in a foundation, too afraid to say anything, too scared of creating a rift that would tear our family apart. Instead, I let it eat at me in silence. And now here I was. 30 years old, successful on paper but emotionally drained. Alone. I was sitting at my kitchen table, my laptop open in front of me, piles of work I needed to get through, but all I could focus on was the email sitting in my inbox. It was an invitation from Bella, an invitation to her and Marcus' 10th anniversary party. I sat there, frozen, staring at the screen. The last time I'd seen Bella was at a family gathering months ago, and we hadn't spoken much. The tension between us had only grown over the years. She'd never outright said it, but it was clear she had no intention of repairing our relationship. For her, it was more about maintaining control, keeping me in my place, in her shadow. But this invitation, it was different. I hadn't heard from her in so long, and now, suddenly, here it was in my face. I stared at the subject line, my thumb hovering over the mouse, unsure whether to open it or delete it. A part of me wanted to ignore it, to shut it down and forget about it. But another part of me, the part that had spent so long trying to play along with Bella's game, couldn't resist. I opened the email. The message was simple. A casual greeting, a few lines about how everything was going with her and Marcus, and then the invitation. A celebration of 10 years together, a family affair. The words seemed harmless enough, but I felt an overwhelming sense of dread settle in my chest. Should I go? I whispered to myself. I glanced around my apartment, tidy, well-organized, a reflection of my life. Everything had a place, everything was structured, but inside I felt like a mess. I had spent years trying to build a life I could be proud of, all while watching Bella take pieces of it for herself. The success, the relationships, the attention. It was like a game she played, and I was the one who always lost. I closed my eyes and leaned back in my chair. The cool air from the open window brushed against my skin, but I barely noticed it. My thoughts were elsewhere, swirling. I thought of Marcus, her husband. The one man I had briefly dated, only for her to swoop in and steal him away. He was probably the only person who ever treated me with genuine affection, and I had lost him too. To her. I thought about the family dinners, the holidays, the times I had bent over backward trying to be the daughter, the sister that they wanted me to be. All the while, Bella played her part, subtly undermining me, all while everyone looked the other way. She was the perfect actress, the perfect charmer. It was as if no one could see what she was doing, but I saw it, and I'd let it go for too long. Now, the anniversary party, the chance for me to finally confront everything. I opened the email again. The words, "It's been too long, Ava, I miss you," seemed like a challenge, like she was daring me to show up. My thoughts, I've been running from this for so long, but I'm done. I won't be her shadow anymore. I'm done letting her steal everything from me. This is my time. If she wants a battle, I'm ready to face her. I hit reply, accepting the invitation. It felt like I was stepping into unknown territory, but I also felt a sense of relief, of resolve. The anxiety was still there, but something else, something stronger, was rising inside me. It was time to stop hiding. Time to face Bella, face the truth of our relationship, and see where it would lead. This was my moment. This was the time for change. The plane touched down in Cedar Falls just as the sun began to set, casting a soft golden hue over the small city. I hadn't been here in years. Cedar Falls was a place that felt distant, almost foreign. My parents used to bring us here occasionally when we were kids, but it was never a city we spent much time in. And now, as I stepped off the plane and into the cool evening air, I couldn't help but feel an unsettling sense of detachment. The city was quiet, its streets winding and narrow, lined with old buildings that seemed to hold secrets of their own. It wasn't a place I would have chosen for a celebration. But then again, nothing about this was normal. Bella and Marcus had chosen Cedar Falls for their 10th anniversary party, a place that didn't hold any particular significance to anyone, at least not that I knew of. I took a cab to the venue, my nerves building with every passing block. The closer I got to the venue, the more distant everything seemed. What was I walking into? What was I supposed to expect? A part of me wondered whether this was just another one of Bella's calculated moves to make everything seem perfect. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a party. When I finally arrived, the venue was everything I had imagined, a stark contrast to the small, quiet town. The building was massive, gleaming under the dim streetlights, and as I walked through the large glass doors, I was immediately hit by the overwhelming scent of fresh flowers, polished wood, and expensive perfume. The ballroom spread out before me, grand and extravagant, adorned with towering crystal chandeliers that cast shimmering light across the entire room. It was stunning, without a doubt, everything perfectly in place. Hundreds of glimmering glasses filled with champagne, the sound of soft classical music playing in the background, and an air of luxury that seemed to breathe through every corner of the room. The long banquet tables were draped in pristine white linens, each setting meticulously arranged with a single rose at the center. It was everything one would expect from a high society anniversary celebration. But as I stood there, staring into the sea of guests, something about the scene felt off. The elegance of the room, the polished faces, and the laughter all seemed a little too staged, too perfect. There was no warmth in the air, no genuine connection between the guests. I could feel the tension, a subtle unease that prickled at my skin, growing with every passing minute. I scanned the room, noticing the crowd of around 100 people, family, friends, colleagues, all gathered to celebrate Bella and Marcus's decade of marriage. But despite the fancy decorations and the smiles plastered on their faces, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. The laughter sounded hollow, like an act everyone was playing to keep up appearances. Marcus stood by Bella's side, greeting guests with his charming smile, but I could tell something was off with him. He didn't look like a man enjoying his anniversary. His eyes, though occasionally sparkling with forced cheer, held something deeper, something more resigned, more distant. I noticed him glancing around the room more than once, his posture stiff, as if he were a man trapped in a performance he no longer wanted to be part of. And then there was Bella, standing beside him, playing her role flawlessly. She was radiant in a flowing red gown, her hair styled to perfection. But her smile, it didn't reach her eyes. I saw the way she glanced at me when I entered, her gaze sharp, calculating. Her perfectly painted mask was in place, but I could see through it. Bella was always like this, playing the part, manipulating the scene, making everything look flawless on the surface while hiding whatever lay beneath. This is it, this is what I've been dreading. It's all just an illusion, isn't it? A facade she's created to make everything look perfect, while we both know it's anything but. I should have expected this from her. The tension, the cold smiles, the way everything seems so calculated. What is she hiding? What does she want me to see tonight? The knot in my stomach tightened as I made my way through the crowd. I couldn't ignore the uneasy feeling growing in the pit of my stomach. It wasn't just the setting, it was Bella's presence. There was something in the way she moved, something in the way she kept looking at me from the corner of her eye, as if she were measuring my every move. It was the same look she always gave me, the look that said I wasn't enough, that she was always one step ahead. As I approached the drink station, I saw Marcus standing alone for a moment, his smile gone, replaced by a tired expression. He looked up and met my gaze for just a second before turning away. But that moment was enough to tell me everything I needed to know. His eyes spoke volumes. He didn't want to be here. He didn't want to pretend anymore. I could feel the weight of the years of manipulation, of subtle betrayals, pressing on me. Ava, the sister who was always in the background, who was always overlooked. Bella had done this to me for years, but now I was ready to face it. This party wasn't just about celebrating their marriage. It was about facing the lies, the facade, and perhaps, finally, the truth. The champagne bubbles fizzed as I took a glass, my fingers trembling slightly. My mind was racing, but my resolve had never been clearer. Tonight, I would see through all of this, the smiles, the laughter, the glittering chandeliers. Because no matter how much Bella tried to perfect her little world, she couldn't hide the cracks forever. And I was here, ready to expose them. As the night progressed, the party became an ever-growing blur of noise and movement. The clinking of champagne glasses, the soft hum of conversations, the rustle of gowns and tuxedos, it all blended into a soundscape of empty celebration. I moved through the crowd, trying to stay unnoticed, observing everything. And yet, as I scanned the faces around me, my mind kept circling back to one person, Bella. She was everywhere, chatting, laughing, holding court, and drawing attention as she always did. She was the perfect picture of elegance, her red dress flowing around her, a charming smile plastered on her face as she spoke to guest after guest. But every time she glanced my way, I saw the faintest flicker of something else. Something not so pleasant. Then, as I was reaching for a glass of champagne, my eyes caught something I hadn't expected. Bella, standing by the bar, had a drink in her hand. I watched as she moved her fingers subtly, as if she were adjusting the glass, and then, my stomach dropped. She pulled something small from her clutch. A tiny vial, no bigger than a lipstick tube, slipped out of her purse. I couldn't see exactly what was inside, but I could tell from her swift, practiced movement that this wasn't the first time she had done this. Bella leaned over the edge of the bar, her fingers steady, and with the ease of someone who had done this countless times before, she poured the contents into her own glass of champagne. The liquid dissolved almost immediately, as though it was meant to blend in with the bubbles. I froze. For a moment, I thought I had imagined it. Maybe it was some kind of trick of the light or my nerves playing games with me. But no. My heart was racing, and as my gaze remained fixed on Bella, I realized with a sinking feeling that I wasn't wrong. I had seen exactly what I thought I saw. Bella had just poisoned her own drink. But why? My mind raced through 100 possibilities. Was she planning on drinking it herself? Was this just some kind of manipulation in her endless game of control? Or was she planning to offer it to someone else, someone unsuspecting? I stood there for what felt like an eternity, paralyzed by the shock of the moment. But the more I thought about it, the more my suspicion grew. This wasn't just a simple act of jealousy or spite. This was calculated, deliberate. There was something dark happening, something much more sinister than a petty rivalry. What is she doing? Why would she? Why would she poison herself? Or worse, someone else? This can't be happening. Am I really seeing this? It's hard to believe, but I know what I saw. And if I don't do something, I don't know what's going to happen next. I couldn't just stand there, frozen in shock, watching her plot whatever this was. I needed to act, and I needed to act quickly. But I wasn't going to confront her just yet. I wanted to understand more. I needed proof. I glanced around the room, my eyes darting to Marcus, who was standing a few feet away, engaged in a conversation with one of the other guests. He looked distracted, but his eyes kept darting nervously around the room. His usual confident smile was missing, replaced by a kind of forced calm that didn't fit the occasion. It made my stomach twist. And that's when I saw my chance. I quickly moved toward him, my heart pounding in my chest. Bella was still too focused on her glass, distracted by the attention she was receiving from a few other guests. In a smooth, almost practiced motion, I slipped my glass into her hand, unnoticed, silent. Then, without hesitation, I switched it with Marcus's glass, which was sitting on a nearby table. I took a moment to steady my breath, pretending to sip from my own glass, all while my mind raced. As I lifted the champagne glass to my lips, the faint taste of bitterness lingered at the back of my throat. I didn't drink it, of course, not yet. But Marcus, standing nearby and still engaged in his conversation, didn't notice as I subtly adjusted his glass, switching it with mine. It felt almost too easy, a small, quick switch. Like a game, except this time I wasn't playing for fun. I was playing for the truth. If Bella thought I was just going to let this slide, she was wrong. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about Marcus, too. I couldn't let her do this, not to anyone. If I could catch her in the act, expose her, maybe it would finally be enough to stop the manipulation. As I walked back to the bar, I tried to breathe steadily. My pulse was racing, but I forced myself to remain calm. I needed to watch Marcus. Watch him closely. I needed to see if anything happened after he drank from that glass. I couldn't help but wonder what I was stepping into. What was this game really about? And what would Bella do once she realized that her little scheme wasn't going unnoticed? As the night wore on, I kept my eyes trained on Marcus, watching for any signs that something was wrong. My gut told me this wasn't over. It wasn't just a petty trick. Whatever Bella had planned, I was now in the middle of it, and I wasn't about to let her get away with it this time. I watched intently as Marcus took the glass from his hand, a simple gesture, but one that felt monumental to me. As he brought it to his lips, I felt my heartbeat quicken. I had switched the glasses, everything was in motion now. The truth was finally about to surface, whether we were ready for it or not. I forced myself to breathe, feeling the weight of the moment settle in my chest. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Marcus continued his conversation, smiling politely at a guest who had come to introduce himself. But then, just minutes after he drank, it began. A subtle shift. At first, it was small. He paused mid-sentence, the words tripping from his lips. A brief look of confusion clouded his face. I assumed he might have just been tired, perhaps feeling a bit overwhelmed by the crowd, but then it became harder to ignore. His smile, once so easy and carefree, started to falter. The light in his eyes dimmed, and his posture, once proud and confident, began to slump. He fidgeted with his suit collar as though it were suddenly too tight, his fingers moving to his wrist, to his tie, almost like he couldn't remember what to do with them. And then he spoke. Wait, what were we talking about? His voice was slower now, slurring slightly, his words not coming out the way he meant them. No, sorry, just, my head feels weird. He laughed nervously, but there was an unease to it, an edge that hadn't been there before. The realization hit me like a brick. It wasn't just the drink, it was something more. My stomach turned as I watched Marcus start to lose control, his movements jerky and unsure. He stumbled slightly, catching himself on the arm of a chair, but it was clear that he wasn't quite in full control of his body. I couldn't look away. Every part of me was screaming, but I stayed silent, my eyes fixed on him. His condition was worsening. This is it. This is exactly what Bella wanted. But why? What's her endgame here? Why would she? Before I could finish the thought, a man nearby noticed Marcus's odd behavior. He leaned in, asking if everything was okay, but Marcus simply waved him off with a dazed smile, muttering something about needing a drink. I couldn't believe it. He was barely holding it together, yet Bella, who was standing just a few feet away, didn't seem to notice, or worse, didn't care. I glanced at her. She was still engrossed in a conversation, laughing and smiling as if nothing was wrong. Bella's attention never wavered from the guests surrounding her. She was still playing the perfect host, the woman of the hour, making sure everyone was engaged and entertained. But the truth was right there, unfolding in front of her. Her husband was slowly unraveling, and yet she didn't even blink. It was as if she had no idea, or worse, no concern, that something was terribly wrong. How can she not see this? How can she stand there acting so normal while her husband is falling apart? Is this how it's been for years? Has she been controlling him like this all along? As Marcus began to sway slightly, his face flushed, his words coming out in fragmented bursts, the guests around him started to notice. Whispers started to spread through the crowd, people exchanging uneasy glances, not sure if this was part of the performance or something genuinely wrong. But the more I observed, the more I realized, Marcus wasn't faking it. This was real, and the longer it went on, the more I wondered, how deep did Bella's control over him really go? I stepped closer, trying to get a better view of what was happening. But Marcus, who had always been the picture of stability and charm, was now a far cry from that. He was struggling, his words slurring as he tried to explain himself to anyone who would listen, but the effort seemed futile. And as I looked closer, I saw the tiniest glimmer of recognition in his eyes. It was the look of a man who had been pushed to his limit, a man who had finally been broken by something that had been eating at him for a long time. This isn't just a one-time thing. This is a man who's been worn down. This isn't about a drink. This is about everything he's been enduring in this marriage, and now it's all coming to a head. The signs were there all along, he just never had the strength to fight back. As I turned to glance at Bella again, I saw her watching us, but her face showed no concern, just the faintest flicker of something else. Was it anger, frustration? I couldn't tell, but I knew one thing for sure, she wasn't the perfect wife she appeared to be. There was something darker hiding underneath that polished exterior, and it wasn't just the glass of poisoned champagne. I knew it. I've always known something was wrong. The way she controls everything around her. The way she manipulates everyone into playing along with her perfect little story. But this is bigger than I thought. Marcus took another unsteady step forward, his words growing more disconnected, more difficult to follow. The room had grown quieter, more tense. And then, as if in slow motion, he stumbled, falling against a table where a few guests were seated, sending a tray of hors d'oeuvres crashing to the floor. Bella was still smiling, her eyes flicking nervously towards him, but it wasn't concern I saw, no, it was irritation. She leaned in close to him, whispering something under her breath, but I could see it clearly now. The manipulation. The control. The power she had over him, the power she had been exerting for years, hidden behind a mask of elegance and charm. It was all coming into focus now. The more I observed Marcus and Bella, the more I began to notice the growing distance between them, one that had been there all along but was now more apparent than ever. Their interactions, once filled with playful touches and whispered jokes, were now strained, mechanical, as if they were two strangers forced to coexist under the same roof. Marcus, though still outwardly friendly to the guests, seemed distant, his every movement tense, like someone on the verge of breaking down. I caught glimpses of him every now and then, standing a little further away from Bella than I had ever seen before. He wasn't holding her hand, wasn't leaning in close to her ear to whisper. Instead, he kept his distance, his eyes occasionally drifting to the far corners of the room as if he were lost in his own thoughts, trapped in a world no one else could see. Bella, on the other hand, was performing her role flawlessly. She continued to smile, to chat with guests, to laugh at jokes, but there was something about her demeanor that seemed too forced. Her eyes flickered toward Marcus every so often, her lips twitching in a way that was far from natural. It was clear that, while she appeared the picture of grace and happiness, the cracks in their marriage were starting to show, and they were glaring. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong between them. I had always known there was tension beneath the surface, but tonight it was palpable. And I wasn't the only one who noticed. The way Marcus kept stepping away from her, the way he avoided eye contact, it all added up. Something had shifted in their relationship, and I couldn't help but wonder just how deep those issues ran. As the evening wore on, my suspicions were confirmed in a way I hadn't anticipated. It was a quiet moment in the party when the noise of the crowd seemed to fade for just an instant. Bella had stepped away to talk to a few friends, her attention elsewhere. Marcus, still looking a bit disoriented, stood alone near the bar, his hand gripping a glass of water as if it were his only anchor in this sea of chaos. This was my moment. I had been carefully watching them for most of the evening, But now I had the chance to hear the truth directly from him. As I moved discreetly through the crowd, I found a spot just behind Marcus, close enough to catch a fragment of his words, but far enough away that I wouldn't be noticed. I wasn't trying to intrude, I was just looking for answers. And then, without warning, the truth began to spill out. Marcus was talking to someone nearby, a friend, or so I thought. His voice was low, but the words hit me like a punch to the gut. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," Marcus confessed, his voice strained. "I'm suffocating, man. Bella, she controls everything, every damn thing. I can't make a move without her approval. It's like she's always there, hovering over me, making sure I stay in line." His words were like knives, cutting through the facade of the evening. I took a step closer, my breath catching in my chest. He continued, the weight of his confession heavier with each syllable. "I used to think I could handle it. I thought it was just part of being in a relationship, you know. But now, I don't know, I feel trapped. Like I'm not even living my life anymore. It's all about what she wants, what she needs. I'm just a prop in her story." The words were quiet, vulnerable. It was a side of Marcus I had never seen before, a man broken by his marriage, suffocated by the very woman he had once promised to love. I felt my chest tighten as the realization sank in. Bella's control over him wasn't just a petty thing. It was deep, insidious, and it had been going on for years. His voice grew softer, almost as if he was speaking to himself more than anyone else. "I've tried to talk to her, tried to make her understand, but it's like talking to a wall. She doesn't listen. She just manipulates. Everything she does is a game, and I'm stuck playing it because I don't know how to break free." I stood there stunned. The truth was worse than I could have imagined. Marcus, the charming, successful man I had always thought had it all together, was living in a prison built by his wife. Bella had always been manipulative, but to hear it from Marcus himself made it real. The truth was undeniable now. As I stood there, listening to Marcus's confession, it felt like everything around me shifted. I'd always believed I was the only one trapped in Bella's web. For years, I thought I was the sole victim of her jealousy, her manipulation. I had been convinced that her relentless competition, her subtle sabotage, was just about me, that she couldn't stand to see me succeed, couldn't bear the thought of me having something she didn't. But now, listening to Marcus, everything clicked into place. Bella wasn't just jealous of me. No, it was more complicated than that. She wasn't only consumed by a need to control and outdo me, she was terrified of losing control over him too. Marcus had become the one person in her life who had the potential to break free from her grip, to live independently, to think for himself. He was the one person who could actually escape her manipulation. In all those years, I had never considered that. I had always thought her jealousy was purely personal, but Bella's obsession with control didn't just stop at me, it extended to everyone, to everything. And Marcus. He was the perfect target for that control. A man who was once her equal, who had the power to stand up to her, had now been reduced to a shell of himself, trapped in a marriage where his every move was dictated by her. So all this time, it wasn't just me. She doesn't want to lose him. She needs him under her thumb just like she needed me. But he's different. He's the one who can break free, who could challenge her. That's why she's been so brutal with him. That's why she's kept him in line with her games, her manipulation, her poison. It's not just me she's threatened by, it's him. It hit me hard. The pieces I had spent years trying to fit together suddenly made sense. I had always believed I was the one Bella was after, the one she needed to control. But it wasn't just about me. It was about power and how far Bella would go to maintain it. She couldn't let Marcus leave her, not for a second. She couldn't let anyone, especially him, break free. I had always been her competition, but Marcus. He was the one she truly feared. And that fear, I now realized, was the reason for everything, the jealousy, the manipulation, the lies. Bella wasn't just a sibling in rivalry with me. She was a woman who was terrified of losing the life she had carefully constructed, a life where she controlled everything. I began to feel something shift inside me, a sense of clarity, a sense of resolve. For so long, I had let Bella define my life. I had let her dictate how I felt, how I saw myself, how I interacted with everyone around me. But as I stood there, in the midst of her perfect little world, I felt something stronger than the resentment I had always carried. It was the realization that I needed to protect myself from her, to stop letting her power over me dictate my every decision. But there was something else that gnawed at me too, a more urgent feeling. I had always thought I was the only one suffering under Bella's control, but now I saw it clearly. Marcus was suffering too. He was trapped just like I had been, just like I was. And if I didn't do something, he would continue to be suffocated by her manipulation, forced to live in a life that wasn't truly his. I can't let him keep living like this. I can't let Bella control him, just like she tried to control me. I've lived this nightmare long enough, and I refuse to watch him drown in it too. He deserves a life where he can breathe, where he can make his own choices. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew I had to do something. I wasn't just standing up for myself anymore. I was standing up for Marcus, for the man I had once cared about, and for the truth that needed to come to light. In that moment, the decision became clear. I could no longer remain passive, unable to challenge Bella's grip on my life and everyone around me. No, tonight, everything would change. I couldn't keep hiding from the truth, and I couldn't allow her to continue manipulating us both. I looked at Marcus one more time, still standing there, visibly distressed, trapped in a world where his own voice had been muted for too long. I felt a rush of anger for him, for all the years he had been broken down by Bella. And then, with a heavy heart, I made a silent vow. I wasn't going to let Bella win anymore. Not this time. The tension in the room had escalated beyond what I could have anticipated. What was supposed to be a celebration had spiraled into chaos. Marcus, unable to maintain his composure any longer, had stumbled into a table, knocking over a tray of glasses and sending a ripple of unease through the crowd. His face was flushed, his eyes vacant, and the laughter that had once filled the ballroom now faded into murmurs of concern. But the most shocking part, Bella's reaction. Instead of rushing to his side, instead of showing any kind of genuine concern for her husband, Bella's face contorted into a mask of anger. Her eyes locked onto me across the room, and for the first time, I saw the true extent of her fury. She pushed past the guests, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor, her movements fast and deliberate. She was heading straight for me. I knew the moment she reached me, the storm was about to break. "You did this, didn't you?" Her voice was low, seething with a venom I hadn't heard before. "You ruined everything." I knew you couldn't just leave well enough alone. I took a steady breath, forcing myself to remain calm as Bella's presence loomed over me. She was furious, her hands trembling with rage, but I wasn't intimidated. Not anymore. "No, Bella," I said, my voice even measured. "You did this. You poisoned Marcus." Her eyes widened, the shock barely lasting a second before she regained her composure. "What are you talking about?" She snapped, trying to play it off, but there was a crack in her voice. "Stop making up stories, Ava. This is just—" "No, it's not a story," I cut her off, standing my ground. "I saw you, Bella. I saw you pour something into your glass earlier. Something that wasn't champagne." Her breath caught in her throat, and for a brief moment I saw the mask slip, a flicker of panic, quickly masked by a tight, fake smile. But it was too late. I had seen too much. She's trying to cover it up. She's always been good at pretending, but now she's cornered. I have the proof. She's not getting away with this, not this time. I leaned in closer, my voice steady but cutting through the air like a knife. "You were so careful, so sneaky. I watched you drop that vial into your drink, Bella. But what I don't understand is why. What's your motive? Why would you do this to Marcus? To your own husband?" Bella's face twisted in fury, and for a moment she said nothing. The room had quieted, and all eyes were on us, but Bella was no longer concerned with the onlookers. Her focus was entirely on me, her lips curled into a twisted smile. "How dare you accuse me of such a thing?" She spat, her voice shaking with anger. "This is just another one of your pathetic attempts to ruin my life, isn't it? You've always been jealous of me, Ava. You've always wanted to tear me down, but guess what? It's not working. It's over. You don't get to control anything anymore. I could see the desperation in her eyes now. The cracks were wider than I had ever seen before. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about her fear of losing everything. The control she had so meticulously crafted was slipping through her fingers, and I wasn't about to let her cover it up with lies and manipulations. She's scared. She's not just angry, she's terrified. She thought she could control Marcus, control me, control everything. But now the truth is out, and she can't hide from it. I took a slow step forward, my voice never wavering. I've watched you for years, Bella. I've seen how you've destroyed people around you to maintain your power. But you can't keep doing this. Not anymore. Her face went pale for just a moment, and in that flash of vulnerability, I saw the truth. Bella knew it was over. She could manipulate her way through family gatherings, hide behind her charm, but the truth had come out. And there was no going back. You think this is over? She snarled, her voice barely above a whisper, but there was a dangerous edge to it. This isn't over, Ava. You think you're the victim. You've always been the one destroying everything. I just gave you a taste of what it feels like to lose control. No, Bella, you're the one who's been destroying things, and now you're going to face the consequences. The room remained silent, the tension so thick it was almost unbearable. I could feel the eyes of the guests on me, waiting for something to happen. But I didn't back down. Not now. Not when I was finally standing up for myself. You've been controlling everyone around you for so long, I said quietly, my voice cutting through the stillness. But now, it's my turn. I'm not afraid of you anymore, and I'm not letting you control Marcus, either. Bella's face darkened, and I could see the anger building behind her eyes again. You think you've won. She hissed, but I could tell she was starting to lose her composure. The facade she had so carefully built was crumbling. No, I said firmly. But I'm not going to let you destroy any more lives. Not mine, not Marcus's. Not anyone's. With that, I turned and walked away, leaving Bella standing there, seething with rage. I could feel the weight of her glare burning into my back, but I didn't look back. The truth was finally out, and there was no hiding it anymore. The tension in the room was suffocating. Everyone was still reeling from the confrontation between Bella and me. Her fury was palpable, her hands shaking with anger as she shot venomous words in my direction. But just as I thought the situation was about to spiral completely out of control, Marcus did something I never saw coming. He stepped forward, his hands still slightly trembling, his face pale but determined. The room fell silent, every eye turning toward him. I could see the hesitation in his eyes, but there was something else, something deeper that made my heart race. Without warning, Marcus cleared his throat, his voice steady but strained. I need to say something, he said, cutting through the chaotic noise in the room. His gaze flickered to Bella for a brief second, and then, with a deep breath, he spoke again. I've known everything, he said, his words slicing through the air. The shock on everyone's faces was immediate. No one knew what to say. Bella froze. Her expression faltered for just a split second, and then she quickly masked it with an icy smile. But her eyes, they were wide with disbelief, panic starting to creep in. I've known everything Bella has done to Ava for years, Marcus continued, his voice gaining strength with each word. It wasn't just the jealousy. It wasn't just the manipulation. I knew about every little thing she did, from the subtle control to the extreme measures she took to ensure Ava never had a moment of peace. I felt my heart pound in my chest. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The truth was finally coming to light. But what Marcus said next left me speechless. And I've been documenting it, he added, his voice quieter now but still strong. I've kept records. Everything she did, every time she crossed a line, I wrote it down, I recorded it. I have proof of everything. His words echoed in my mind, and I could barely process what he was saying. The man I had once cared about, the man who had seemed like he was just as much a victim as I was, had been quietly gathering evidence all along. So, he knew all of it, and instead of speaking up he kept it hidden. Why? Why wait until now? Marcus took a step closer to Bella, his eyes no longer filled with uncertainty, but with a fire I had never seen before. I've had enough, Bella. I've been watching you tear people down, watching you ruin everyone's lives for your own gain. But tonight, I'm done. I'm done being part of your lies. I'm done with this marriage." The words seemed to hit Bella like a slap in the face. Her jaw dropped slightly, her eyes flashing with disbelief, but there was no mistaking the rage that was building behind her features. For the first time, Bella was losing control. And this time, it wasn't just about me. Marcus continued, his voice steady but resolute. "I'm leaving you, Bella. After tonight, I'm done with this marriage. I'm not going to live in your shadow anymore. I'm not going to keep pretending everything is fine when it's not. I deserve more than this, and so do you." There was a long, drawn-out silence that followed his words, a deafening stillness that swept over the crowd. Bella stood there, her face twisted in disbelief, her chest rising and falling as she tried to process what Marcus had just said. Her eyes flickered from him to me, and back again, and then, finally, her composure shattered completely. "What? What are you saying?" Bella stammered, her voice shaky, her grip tightening on the edge of her champagne flute. "You're leaving me? You think you can just walk away from this? From me? After everything we've been through, you're throwing it all away." Marcus didn't flinch. "Yes, I am," he said firmly. "You've held me captive in this marriage, in this life, for too long. I've watched you destroy everything around you to keep up this perfect image, but I'm not playing your game anymore." Bella's face contorted with shock, and then the anger hit her. Like a storm breaking free, she lunged toward him, her voice rising into a frantic shriek. "No, you can't leave me. You can't do this to me." Her words were ragged, each one filled with panic and disbelief. "You'll never get away from me. I'll make sure of it. You can't leave, Marcus. You think you can just walk away and start over. You're nothing without me." The room held its breath, every guest frozen in place, watching the unraveling of a marriage that had appeared so perfect, so flawless on the outside. But now, in front of everyone, the facade was gone and the ugly truth had surfaced. This is it. The truth has come out, and Bella can't handle it. She thought she could keep everything under control, but Marcus is finally standing up to her. He's done being her puppet. And now, the monster she's created is coming for her. Marcus stood tall, his shoulders squared, his eyes unwavering. "I'm leaving, Bella. I'm done." His voice was firm, final. "And nothing you do will stop me." Bella's face twisted in fury, her entire body trembling with rage. But for the first time, it wasn't the cold, calculated fury of a woman in control. No, this was pure, unrestrained panic. She was losing the one thing she had fought so hard to keep, the one thing that gave her power. "I will ruin you," she hissed through clenched teeth. "You will regret this, Marcus. I swear to you, you'll never be free." But Marcus didn't flinch. He turned his back to her, his decision made. "I've already regretted it for years." But not anymore. As he walked away from her, the air felt like it had finally cleared. Bella stood there, trembling with anger, a woman undone by her own lies, her own manipulation. And as I watched Marcus walk toward the exit, leaving Bella behind, I realized that for the first time, we were both free. Bella stood there, her face twisted in disbelief, her body trembling with the kind of fury and fear I had never seen in her before. Her eyes darted between Marcus and me, as though she couldn't believe what was happening. For the first time, I saw her vulnerability, but it didn't make me feel sympathy. It only made me feel a deep sense of relief. Marcus, his expression firm and resolute, didn't flinch as Bella sobbed in front of him. She reached out for him, grabbing his arm with desperation, her voice cracking as she pleaded, "Marcus, please, don't leave me. You can't do this. You're the only one who understands me. We built this life together. Don't throw it away." But Marcus, despite the pain in his eyes, shook his head. "I can't do this anymore, Bella. I've been watching you destroy everything around me for years. I can't live like this. Not anymore." Bella's hands fell to her sides, her body sagging as if all the strength had drained from her. The tears flowed freely now, but they didn't change anything. There was no going back for her. She had spent so long playing the perfect wife, the perfect woman, but behind that mask, she had manipulated and controlled everyone in her life, including Marcus. And now it was unraveling. "I'm filing for divorce," Marcus said, his voice steady but full of finality. This marriage is over. I'm done. There was a long, tense silence before Bella finally spoke again, her voice barely audible, broken. You'll regret this. You'll never be able to find someone like me. No one will ever love you like I did. But Marcus didn't respond. He didn't need to. The damage had already been done, and the life they once built together had shattered. There was nothing left to say. As Marcus turned and walked away, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness wash over me. For him, for me, and for the life that would never be the same again. As the last words of the confrontation hung in the air, I stood there, feeling a weight lifting off my shoulders that I hadn't even realized was there. For so long, I had been caught in the tangled web of Bella's manipulation, forced to watch from the sidelines as she took and took, never once caring about the damage she caused. But now, for the first time in years, I felt free. I had spent so much of my life trying to please her, trying to make her see me as more than just her competition, trying to win her approval. But now I understood. I wasn't supposed to win her approval. I was supposed to protect myself from her. And after everything that had happened tonight, I was done. This is it. The moment I've been waiting for. I'm free. I'm no longer her pawn, no longer at her mercy. For the first time in years, I can breathe. I can live my life the way I want to. No more manipulation. No more lies. As the reality of the situation settled in, I realized that I could no longer maintain a relationship with Bella. I had tried for years, hoping, forgiving, pretending that things would change. But they never did. Tonight had shown me the truth of who she was. A person capable of great manipulation, of tearing people down just to maintain control. And I couldn't allow myself to be part of that anymore. When I turned to look at Bella one last time, standing there, broken and defeated, I realized that the sister I once knew no longer existed. The woman standing in front of me was a stranger, someone who had spent years systematically destroying me and everyone around her to keep her perfect image intact. I had given her too much of my life, too many chances, too many apologies for things I never did wrong. And in that moment, I made my decision. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep trying to fix things that were never meant to be fixed. She'll never change. And I can't keep allowing myself to be a victim of her games. I'm done. I took a deep breath and walked away from her. I didn't need to say another word. The silence spoke volumes. There was nothing left to say, nothing left to fix. Our relationship had reached its end, and I was finally ready to move on. Walking out of the hotel that night, I felt a strange sense of peace. The world around me seemed brighter, the air fresher, as if I had been holding my breath for far too long. I was free, not just from Bella, but from the weight of everything that had kept me tethered to a life that wasn't mine. I could finally start over. I could rebuild my life on my own terms, without the constant fear of falling into Bella's shadow. As I stepped into the cool night air, I smiled to myself. The weight had been lifted. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I know one thing for sure: I'll never let anyone control my life again. I've got this. I'm going to be okay. Sometimes, doing the right thing isn't easy. It's never easy. Letting go of what's familiar, even when it's toxic, is one of the hardest things anyone can do. But if I've learned anything tonight, it's that in order to move forward in life, we have to learn to love ourselves enough to set boundaries. We can't allow the people who hurt us to have power over us anymore. Not after all these years. I thought about Bella, about everything that had transpired, the years of manipulation, the subtle betrayals, the small moments where I had let her chip away at my confidence, at my sense of self. But tonight was different. Tonight, I had taken back control. I had confronted the truth, and now I was walking away from the person I once thought I had to protect, the person I thought I had to keep loving, even when they didn't deserve it. The truth, no matter how painful it may be, was the only thing that had set me free. I realized that, while I had spent years chasing after a relationship that was never going to be healthy, the only way to heal was to stop chasing it. To stop pretending that everything would magically get better if I just kept forgiving, kept understanding. The truth had been there all along, clear as day. Bella was toxic, and I wasn't going to let her poison my life anymore. In the end, the truth is the only thing that can set us free. It's the only thing that can lift us out of the darkness we've been hiding in. And sometimes, it's not just about accepting the truth of others, but about accepting the truth of our own strength, our own power to choose how we live our lives. I've spent too long letting Bella control the narrative of my life, but that's over now. I'm the one who writes my story, not her. As I walked through the streets, the cool night air wrapping around me, I felt like I was leaving behind the weight of all the years of manipulation. I was no longer the victim of her jealousy or her games. I was no longer the person who waited for her approval, for her love that never came. I was free, and it felt like a rebirth. It's hard to walk away. It's hard to do what's right when everything inside of you is telling you to turn back, to try one more time. But sometimes, we have to let go. We have to protect ourselves, even if it means cutting ties with someone we once thought we couldn't live without. It's not about hate. It's not even about revenge. It's about loving myself enough to not let anyone destroy me anymore. I knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be moments of doubt, moments when I would wonder if I had done the right thing, when the memories of the good times with Bella would creep in. But deep down, I knew this was the only way to truly move forward. To finally stand tall, unburdened by the chains I had let tie me down for so long. The truth had come to light, and with it came the courage to step into a new chapter of my life. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. I was ready for whatever came next. If you've ever faced manipulation within your family, if you've ever been made to feel small, powerless, or invisible by someone you should be able to trust, I want you to know this. You are not alone. You are not the only one who's felt the weight of another person's control, and you don't have to carry that weight anymore. Sharing my story was the first step in setting myself free. It was the first time I truly let go of the fear that had kept me chained to Bella and the lies she told. Now, I'm not just telling my story, I'm telling yours too, because we all deserve to be heard. We all deserve the freedom that comes with speaking the truth. So, I invite you to share your story too. If you've ever had to fight your way out of a situation where someone manipulated you, where you felt forced to play along with lies or control, let your voice be heard. You don't have to face this alone, and you don't have to stay trapped in situations where you feel small. We can break free together. The truth can set us all free, but only if we're brave enough to share it. So, I'm asking you. Share your story. Share how you overcame the manipulation, how you set boundaries, and how you found your way back to yourself. Your strength will inspire others who are still in the dark, who don't yet know that there is a way out. We don't have to endure injustice, even from the people who are closest to us. We have the right to protect ourselves, to say no to the things that hurt us, and to create lives filled with peace, respect, and love. You deserve that, and so does everyone else who has faced what you've faced. So I'll ask again, what's your story? What have you gone through, and how did you break free? Share it with the world. Let your truth be the light that guides others to their own freedom. Remember, you are stronger than the darkness, and you are never alone.